This conference will now be recorded.
All right, so let's get started, and why don't we start with anybody who has burning questions?
I was here just more to hear what other people's questions were to see if it sparked any of mine.
Okay, I made a list of a couple things that I was thinking of. One,
Awesome.
I don't know if this is just me, but when we do like the Wiscat ILL request, it feels very arduous that you go into, I'm just looking up the words here so I sound, okay, know what I'm doing, okay. So you go into the request manager, and then you go into the single account of the book, and then you print it, or you want to print it, but then to actually do that, you have to get out and then go back to like the staff dashboard to the ILL print book labels. Is there a shorter way to do that, or is it just like a 6-click task?
It is a 6-click task.
Okay.
That used to be 2 whole separate things that were a lot clunkier than it really is. So you're right that you would go into your request manager, and then any pendings you would have, you could, do, there would be a pick list, right? And then I wish that you had one so I could walk through more steps. Let's see if Dodgeville has one that we can just look at. We're definitely not going to accidentally send something that they don't have, but it's easier if we can kind of look at the steps.
Yeah.
Nope, of course not. All right, so who always has some?
Probably Platteville. I know it's Nancy's week at home, so.
Okay, so I bet there are some in Platteville. That's great.
Otherwise, it looks like Hazel Green might.
So dashboard, and of course all of my logins, I don't have my quick link set up, so I hope you do. But there we go, we got some. All right, so you'll go into the pendings. And if you had to go around and look for them, you could print a pick list, which is right here, and go find them. And then your choices are, if you know that you have them, you can set them all into will supply in process. But if you go into the actual record, then you have the option to slide down, scan the barcode, slide back up, move it to shipped, and hit submit. Once it's in that shipped status, then you can go into that print shipping labels and print it and send it off. So it is just that many steps.
Okay, it just seems that while you're on that page of the lender's full record display, it should have the option right there.
Wouldn't that be really wonderful?
Okay, all right. I was hoping there was a shortcut, but okay, thank you.
Yes, it's something that I know the Wiscat people wish they could just kind of embed that print shipping label into this, but it doesn't currently happen. So as of right now, yes, you're doing it the right way. And I'm gonna back out of this so I don't accidentally ship this. But yes, it's just that many steps, unfortunately. All right. Any more questions, or do you want to see a cool thing that we kind of rediscovered recently, or what do we have?
I did have another question on my list, although I want to see the cool thing.
Absolutely.
Can you just again go over how to do reports for like least circulated items for weeding?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, and we're in Argyle. So as we do this, you're going to have your report right in your report writer. So we'll go to the dashboard and to Circ Reports, Report Writer. And I know that there are run reports like that are canned that can give you collections and stuff like that. I like doing it in the report writer because then I get to dictate exactly what's on that spreadsheet. You know, I can choose date item added, publication date, how many times it's circulated this year, you know, last checkout date. I can decide everything I need on that spreadsheet, and it's a lot handier than like their canned reports, which you get what you get. So in order to do one, like give me an example of a collection that you want to weed.
Let's just say adult fiction.
Okay, so adult fiction, we'll start by going to the create new report thing and go to items and new report. And then we choose a starting search group. And again, we want items. The field we want to search. I usually choose permanent branch location collection. You could choose current branch location collection, but I choose permanent just so that if anything is stuck in newly acquired, even though it's like 15 years old, it'll show up as well. So this will be permanent branch location collection. The value is equal to, and then you can do either one thing or a range of things. I suggest you do one at a time when you can, unless you know that they're small collections. So in this case, we're doing Argyle adult fiction. And then we can go up to the top right-hand corner and select output fields. And I always start at author, title, barcode, call number. And then it's up to you what you want to know. So I like to know when it was published. I like to know when I added my holding. I definitely want to know the last checkout date because that's the one that you're probably going to weed mostly based on. Whereas publication date or date item added might be more important for nonfiction, so that you know it's up to date. You can do status because while you're doing your weeding, you might find a bunch of books that are in a status like lost or missing or whatever. And if it hasn't moved in a long time and the status is missing, you probably can get rid of it, right? So I like to have status in there just in case. And then if I'm doing cleanup, I'll sometimes add current location as well, just to make sure it's not in some like weird other place. Then we save the report.
Jen, can I interrupt you for a quick moment and ask, what's the best practice for like lost items? How long do they stay in lost before you just delete them generally?
I always practiced if it's gone for a year, it's gone forever. And the nice thing about if something is in patron lost and you delete the item, the fines and fees are still associated with the patron's account. So you don't like lose that record just because you delete the item. So it's in your best interest to kind of clean that up once a year, just so that you don't have all these lingering things. So I would say a year. You could do it more often if you want.
Okay,
I know
that's
in
up to each
Lancaster,
library, right?
Yep,
Okay.
every library can decide if you want to keep it longer than a year,
We do
especially
it.
we just had a pandemic.
We do it
Yeah,
for
it's up to
6
you.
months, and it gives
Mhm.
like it's a good staff project. Like if I'm running low on, like if I'm going to be gone for a few days or something and won't have something to give them to do, that's what I would assign.
Yep. So also, I don't know if you noticed as I was doing this, I moved the last checkout date. So if you want these in a different order in your spreadsheet, you can move them kind of however you want. If you want your barcode up there. And I put last checkout date at the end just because it's easiest for me. So name of this report. Whenever I do a report in your library, I usually try and add my initials somewhere. So if you see those sitting around, know that I'm not messing with your stuff. I'm just probably looking at it. So, all right. So now we saved the report. Of course, we want to schedule it now. And we want to schedule it at least 2 hours ago. Even though it's Pacific times, I always schedule it at least 2 hours ago because it kicks it into the run cycle right away. And now you'll see in your report writer that this one, not only is it frequency, it's going to run now. It'll be here forever. If you want to run it again, you can schedule it again. You can edit it to change the output fields and stuff. You don't have to start from scratch. And that's why I try and name the report something that's really easily identifiable. So you see, like, there's a bunch of JB stuff in here. That's me. The next thing to do is go back to CIRC reports, view reports. And here it is waiting to run. And if we click this little arrow, there's a refresh button. And they probably shouldn't have put it in because I am an overuser of the refresh button.
Me too.
Sit here and just hit refresh, refresh, refresh until it's ready for me.
Have you?
Sometimes these reports come really fast. Sometimes it takes a little bit. So there it is. We will open it with Excel. All right, can you guys see that on my screen? All right, so the first thing you always have to do is enable editing and then get rid of everything above those blue headers because now it'll be sortable.
That was
so
very
your
frustrating
choices,
to me.
yeah, so if you get rid of those top things, now it's going to sort by this line. And what I typically do is I highlight all my fields, go up to the sort and filter button, and depending on which Excel you have, this might be in a different place or it might look a little different. And then I do a custom sort, and I sort by last checkout date, A to Z, which ends up being oldest to newest. And it says sort anything that looks like a number as a number. Yes, of course we do. And so now all of your adult fiction is in order from the longest ago checked out to the newest. And if you're looking for a certain amount of shelf space, you could just start by highlighting, like, I know I'm going to have to get rid of 100 books. And then once you highlight them, you can kind of look at them and see, like, oh, except for not this one because I need it for this specific reason. So once I kind of decide which ones I'm going to delete, let's just say you need to delete 390 things. So I'll highlight those, right? And a lot of times that's not exactly what you're going to do. I also want to mention you need to scroll all the way to the bottom of the list because there's a bunch of stuff that has never checked out. Some of it is brand new, and so that's okay. Some of it is not brand new, and so you might want to consider letting it go, although you just added it in 2017. So you'll have to take a look at the bottom of that list to see, like, here, this one was added in 2002. It's never ever checked out. Maybe it's time to let it go.
One thing
so that's where you kind of have to look. Yep, go ahead.
One thing I've been doing with my lists, because that's an issue, is I will highlight the chunk that is different than the others, like it hasn't been, and I'll put it on another sheet so that I can sort it separately. And then the one that I will often do the sort and filter and add another layer so that I can put them in alphabetical because otherwise my staff kind of gets really mad at me that they're walking
Well,
out.
and that's the thing. Yep. After you decide what things you want to delete, so say we want to get rid of these, and we're going to get rid of this one, and we're going to get rid of these ones. Don't actually get rid of Ernest Hemingway. I'm just, giving you an example. Now that we've decided these are all the things that we're going to get rid of, and if you want to go through your entire list, go for it. I usually start with stuff that hasn't been checked out, and then stuff that was either published or added a long time ago that's never been checked out. And then I highlight these fields again, and I custom sort them instead of last checkout date by author, and then I'll add a level and then by title. Because now it's going to be in the order that it's on your shelf. And you can take this list out there and look for all the highlighted ones as you walk down the row. And as you go through, I recommend that if you find one that's just really ugly, to maybe consider pulling that one out too. So does that make sense?
Yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you. We'll probably have a book sale coming up this summer, so that'll help us get organized.
Great.
It's
All
funny
right.
how those books you purchased, 3 or 5 years ago, it's kind of personal. You're like, gosh, I thought somebody would want to read that.
It's sometimes really hard to see, but also sometimes you'll be like, how did we miss that the last 4 times we read it?
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
Can I
so,
ask
and
a
now,
question?
yep.
I was just wondering, when people do weed, and I know book sales are one way to get rid of them, what are some other methods? Do people just recycle them or take them to some place that will recycle them? What is the method that other libraries use?
So every library does it a little differently. I know Baker and Taylor has a give back program where they will take certain titles and then they'll pay you in credit for your next order. Some people still have contracts or agreements with programs like World Books that will, like Better World Books, I'm sorry, that will take donated materials off your hands. Some people recycle them or ask the city to haul them away and don't tell us what happens because that's a lot of books. So it kind of depends on what your resources are. Some libraries in small communities can get away with giving them to a thrift store. Larger libraries or libraries with huge amounts of weeding, they usually don't want that kind of quantity of books. So I also know that some will go stick them around in little free libraries or use them as giveaways. Like if we in Lancaster were to weed large print, we would always offer them to the nursing homes.
That's what we do with our
Yeah, so, and audiobooks as well. So there are a lot of different options. Unfortunately, yes, recycling is one of your options.
I believe in Dubuque, this was pre-pandemic, so I don't know if this has changed, but I was told that the Blind Society was trying to do a book drive, just old materials, and they were using them for projects. So I don't know if that's still a thing or not, but different organizations might have purposes. Oh, or for art, yes.
Do this.
By the way,
Make a
Jen, are you going to have like a informational session on how to do stuff like that?
Do that someday.
Also, I always, like, if there's a book that looks old and doesn't have a place in the library, but feasibly interesting to someone, I do check to see if there's any value of it online, because I heard of a library once coming across a $1,500 book, and that'd be sweet. I came across a $300 book, so I will sell those on Amazon. Haven't sold that one yet. I was doing that more frequently before, and I had a rule only if the book was $5 or more, but it was like, it was a lot of work, and it wasn't completely fruitful. But if there was, like, a big numbered item, that would be cool to sell it instead of just unknowingly recycling it Or I have a board member with a farm and he'll take them after our book sale and like have a bonfire with them too.
I also
Well,
want to take a second to plug, in May, I'm doing a Weeding Your Collections webinar with Shauna.
Really?
So if you are interested in more about the technique rather than just the ILS, I'll be talking about ways to weed your collection. So keep that in mind.
that'll be great. That'll be great because I feel a little overwhelmed with weeding sometimes. So I look
It's
forward
one of
to
my favorite things to do. So, all right. Does anybody have another question about the ILS they want to talk about?
A quick one about running reports, but I think someone else had one first.
Go ahead, Megan.
When you were running the report, and I've come across this a few times, what is the difference between like a current location versus a current branch location versus like the change in those titles? I don't really understand because I don't feel like a branch, but am I a branch technically since we're all in the shared ILS? Like that, I didn't understand those terms.
Yeah, so in VERSO, you are all considered branches because they don't have better language to describe our situation as a consortium. So if you use current location, it will say Hazel Green. If you use current branch location, it will say Hazel Green Adult Fiction. So it's going to give you better information if you use branch location collection rather than just current location or permanent location. So I always would suggest that you use branch collection location or whatever that is. You know what I mean?
I do, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Jen, I had a couple things I wanted to ask.
Sure.
One of them is, how is there something that shows how long something has been at a certain status? So like if something's lost, is there something that we can run that shows that we've had this book that's been lost on there for X amount of time?
Yes. There is, and I wish I wouldn't have just logged out, but I like to try and go into your own stuff so it's as familiar as possible. When you're in your dashboard, you go to Circ Reports, Report Writer. So let's say we want patron lost items. It looks like there's been one in the past. I'm just going to start a new report. We're going to look for lost items. So we do an item report, but the field to search would be item status, right?
Right.
Status equal. And you could do a bunch of these. I usually did claimed returned. And then if you hit the control button, you can also get missing and patron lost. So let's say those are the three we want to look for. And again, I pushed the control button when I was selecting additional options. You could also add another parameter and do them one at a time if you wish. So let's select the output fields, and obviously you're still doing author, title, barcode. What you're looking for is last activity date. And last activity date is the last time it changed in some way. So either it was item edited, it was moved from in transit to available, or from available to missing, or from checked out to patron lost. Whatever the last thing that happened to that item is, that's the last activity date. So if you're looking at patron lost things, that last activity date would be the day it moved to lost. And so that's how you would sort out things that have been either missing or lost for a really long time.
Perfect.
Does that
Thank you.
answer your question?
Yes, that answers that one. The other question I had was, sometimes when it seems like when I run reports, they run automatically right away, and sometimes they don't.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a place that you can tell in which way it's going to run?
Cross your fingers and hope for the best.
Okay, because it's like, okay, I tried that
for the
and
most
it's
part-
not working, so then I'll try the other way and it'll work, but.
Yeah, so I always recommend that you move the time clock backwards. So if you save the report,
Do it no matter what.
I move it backwards 2 hours
Okay.
no matter what. So if you want it to run right this second, move it backwards, make sure it's AM, not PM. It is supposed to run on our time. These are set to run right away, like that's the default, but it takes reports in the order that they are in the queue. And if you backdate them or back time them, I guess, it kicks them to the front of the run queue. The problem is, depending on the size of the report, it can still take several minutes. If VERSO is running slow, if their servers are bogged down, or if somebody's doing a really big report elsewhere in their world, not even in our system, it could be an hour. So I typically assume that it's only going to be a few minutes, tops, unless it's a giant report like all of the patrons in the whole system or something like that. But if you back set this time to before, like, like if you're going back in time, it should go faster. So if we scheduled it and then I hop straight over to view reports, it should either like be scheduled to run or already be running. And you'll see that mine popped down after your item due notices because it's scheduled to run before them. So you'll have to scroll and find it in your list. And then again, if you hit this arrow, there's a refresh button here. So you don't have to refresh your whole browser to see if this report has run already.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. Any more questions?
What's the little hot air balloon next to her call number search?
The hot air balloon, some libraries have it turned on and some don't. That is the children's catalog. And if you are interested in setting that up, just reach out to me. Basically what happens is we get to pick which collections it searches. So this kid's catalog, because it's mineral points, will only search the mineral point children's collection. We set it up to not include the young adult section, I believe, when we had that set up. So you can choose if you want it to also search young adult or teen or whatever pieces of your collection you want. But it pulls some subject headings. So if you want books about holidays, then it gives you some more options so kids can try and find books by subject, or they can type in a title or whatever. So it works the same as your regular catalog. It just looks a little more fun for kids, and it scopes down to the children's collections in that library. And then when you hit exit, it takes you back to your adult catalog.
I like that. I may be contacting you.
Yep, there are only a few libraries that currently use it. And it used to be a really clunky button up here. Now it's like, hey, look, kids. So for those of you interested in narrowing down your searches better, I want to show you something that I just recently found. Like say you're looking for new James Patterson books. When I am searching in SWLS, I just get all the James Patterson books, and I have no way of reducing that down to just the newest stuff. I can sort it, of course, by date in this sort column, so the newest stuff will pop to the front. But in your libraries, so let's use Mineral Point. I hope you've added some James Pattersons. if I do a search in Mineral Point, a different icon pops up here because she's added them recently. And you can click on this added in and say the things that have been added just in the last 2 months in Mineral Point. And it pops up. So this is really good for your staff to know that they can reduce down a big list of stuff by what you have most recently added holdings to in the catalog. And it is dependent, this added in button is dependent only on your own collection, not the entire system's collection. So that's why in Southwest, I have clearly not added any James Pattersons to our collection. So that button is just not there because we haven't added any in the last 6 months. But you have, so you have that button. And so one of the reasons I wanted to point it out is because it only exists when results exist. So a lot of people miss it because it's not always there. If you search for Matilda, probably nothing will come up because you haven't added a Matilda book in the last 6 months. But when you're searching things that have recent additions to the collection, it's a really handy way to kind of narrow it down fast.
Can you do just a motion picture and then the added in?
In all headings, motion picture. Let's find out. Yep. But let's see what actually happens. Last 3 weeks, what has Mineral Point added in the last 3 weeks? 2 movies. So at least, you know, something is coming up. So you can experiment with it and see what works best for you and your staff. I'm guessing that Sharon Stone book has something about a motion picture actress or something in one of the headings of the record, but all right, who has a question? Nobody?
Thanks, Jen. That's going to be really helpful for everybody.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I'm plugging the SWLS Help page that is on all of your staff accounts. So as you log in, you'll always see this SWLS Help page now as one of your tabs. And patrons cannot see this, and patrons cannot access this. Only staff members can. But as you scroll down, all the how-to videos that I've ever created are here on a YouTube channel. The best practices guide is here. All of our contact information for SWLS and some more in-depth instructional guides, like what all the circulation options mean and what we recommend you set them to, is here. I'm working on filling these out, so you'll see more blue hyperlinks in the coming probably years. I thought like the first 3 months of when I started, but nope. On this side, it is the preferred list of people to contact if you have a question about an item at a library or a patron account at another library. So a lot of these are the directors, but there are some libraries where the director isn't the one who handles that issue. So it's that person's contact information. And so if you don't know who to talk to at Platteville about somebody returned this without a disc, this is the person. So
that's good.
And then on this side,
contacting Jesse and be like, can you pass me on to whoever is supposed to deal with this?
Yeah, so same with in-transit items. If you have something that's been stuck in transit between your library and another for a long time, these are the people to talk to. So, and then on this side, there's a link to the cataloging app as well as the tutorial on how to use it. So if you have new staff learning how to request that we add items to the catalog, this is how to do it. And then that library profiles workbook that we talked about at our Net Southwest meeting today, the link is here as well.
I know that you had answered it for me, but I didn't know if anybody else had any questions regarding the Z39.50 or whatever it is. And then I did have a different Wiscat question, and I don't know if that's something you'll be able to answer or not.
I bet I can. Can you tell me where you find that Z3950 showing up?
So it's often actually talked about in emails and things like that. And I knew it regarding searches, but I didn't really understand what it meant. And so I just would kind of breeze over it. But it was starting to show up more, especially with the Wiscat stuff. So I just figured I'd ask.
Yeah, so Z3950 is a targeted search for other library systems catalogs. So when we refer to that, it's basically meaning we're looking at the automatically updated versions of like OWLs and Winding Rivers and South Central, or any library catalog in the country that we can access electronically. So I guess it's just like the number that is associated with it, and that's the best way to describe it. So for example, like we have a Z3950 target for our catalog so that other libraries and systems can access what's in our catalog as well.
Okay, thank you. When searching in Wiscat, I've noticed that if I attempted to do like a narrowing down by, say, nonfiction or something like that, it almost deletes, like, or it seemed like last time I did it, it deleted anything that was from other libraries and it just brought it back down to like what SWLS would have. And is that a common thing? Like, should I just not use those filters on the side?
Let's see if we can think of something to search for. So I am doing a Wiscat search. So this is everybody. And you'll see up here it says searching this many resources. At some point that stops and it just gives you them, and then you have to click on it to get more resources. So let's say we are looking at these locations are connected to our catalog. So if you click on one of these, it's going to narrow it down to things in our catalog. So you won't want to use this location one when you're searching Wiscat, because
is that accurate for the material type also?
No. Well, this material type, yes. But if you use format, you should have better luck, I think. Yeah, it's still searching, but I typically use format rather than material type, because material types are things that we indicate, whereas a format comes from the record. So you'll see that here, book has 84 records, but book in format has 360 records. So if we choose in the format section, and I'm sorry, I like list view better, I can see things nicer. You can see that there are results from other library systems. So the format would be better than material type. So if I click on book and material type here, I would bet. Well, it does still have some other resources, but
maybe it was just a fluke.
Right. But I would say that material type is less
reliable.
Oh, here you go. Now that I've got it actually clicked instead of just pretend click, it did reduce it down to stuff in our catalog. see.
Okay, thank you.
So, yep. So format is the best way to go, especially like I assume that you're probably most of the time looking for either nonfiction or if you're looking for DVDs rather than books or books rather than DVDs. Don't use material type, use format.
So Jen, if you're in here and you're looking at this and you say, oh shoot, I see that Barneveld has it. Do we have to go out of this and go back into and request it from Barneveld, or will it be okay to do it
Nope.
through this? Does it
You
leave
can-
it as a Wiscat item, or does it take it into our system item?
Nope. If you click on the Barneveld one and say you want to place a hold, it'll take you back to this reserve screen, which will do it through VERSO and not through Wiscat.
Okay.
Jen, I have a question related to that. I just noticed that Barneveld showed up at the top, and I have, of course, been guilty of requesting things probably outside of the system when it was in the system because I may have missed it. So how to just put that to the top so that I know that the system items come up first?
It should always. The problem is a lot of times there's multiple records for the same title, and the record with our items don't always pop up to the top. So you might have like 4 of the same book because they have either marginally different records, or maybe the ISBNs are different because one is paperback and one is hardcover. DVDs do this a lot depending on how they cataloged it in their systems. So if you see that there's like multiple of the same title, sometimes grouping it. So this one is clustered. If you did no grouping, which a lot of libraries have as kind of their default, you'll see that Barneveld is in this one, but if this one were to pop to the top, this one doesn't have Barneveld in it. So you would have no way of knowing that Barneveld already has it. So I guess in general, my recommendation is to always search just our catalog first, and then click your pancakes and add it and search again if you don't find anything. But otherwise, if you are doing a search and you're worried about that, if you cluster them, don't merge them. That's terrible. I don't recommend using merge. But if you cluster them, then both the Wiscat Union one and the Barneveld one are both showing up under the same heading. So at least you kind of have a better shot at catching one that you might have missed in our own catalog. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you. That was helpful.
Is there a benefit or a pro or con to using the Wiscat Union versus clicking into like a different holding? Or is it just based on?
The more that you can select a specific one, the better. And I would say, I'm trying to find like a good example. If you can find one that's cafe, or if you can find more, or especially South Central, those are going to come faster. If it has to go through the Wiscat Union catalog, it's going to bounce around a lot more. So it's better if you can find like a specific system in our state first.
Okay.
And I would also say that right now, universities are having a hard time keeping up because they are lower on staff right now. A lot of times their students are doing their ILL, so they're not loaning as fast as normal. So if you're used to always getting stuff from like the UWs, if you can find it in a public library catalog first, go there first. Just because they have been a lot more responsive since the pandemic in getting stuff out, and a lot of them have reduced quarantines faster. They're filling their holds. A lot more library staff are in the building. So you might have better luck that way.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question about newly acquired? Outside of our system, how do we know when things are newly acquired if we're not quite sure? I try to look it up sometimes, but is there an indicator within VERSO that tells us that from other libraries?
The best way you have is basically if the publication date comes up as 2020 or 2021, you got to look it up on Amazon or somewhere else.
Well, be careful with the
because-
Amazon though, because I found
Well,
out that
and on Amazon, if the Kindle book was published way before the print book, then it can be confusing. You have to make sure you're looking at the right format. So it's a little bit of like a wobbly science, I guess. So what I usually do is if the book has a pre-pub date, it'll have like the month and day of when it's supposed to be released as well as the year. And you can kind of see that in the item. Otherwise, I mean, if it's got a publication date of either last year or this year, then look it up to make sure it actually was published 6 months ago or more. I wish I had a better answer.
Well, no, that's helpful. I know sometimes, they don't, a library may not add it immediately either, which is why we might have required that are a little later, but I know that general practice is to avoid asking for an item if it is new, so.
And when you get those emails from me saying that I canceled them, don't feel like I'm like judging you at all. It happens all the time. It's so easy to miss. You can't look up every single thing when you have 15 people at the desk. So don't worry about it if it gets kicked back to you. Basically, I'm just emailing you so that you can let your patron know not to expect it yet. So.
Perfect.
All right, does anybody else have questions? Who's going to check out this cell phones and teens book now that they know it's in the system? All right. Any other questions?
thank you for doing this.
Yeah, I love talking about it because I've been discovering so much stuff now that I get to dig into it a little better. So it's really nice to be able to share a little bit of that.
Once pandemic stuff kind of settles more, would you be willing to come do like staff trainings or something like that? Because I'm starting to wonder if my staff would maybe learn better from someone else.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I would love to. And I will be training the Fenimore staff from bottom up. So if you have staff that would benefit from that, we could take a couple people and have them watch from the beginning. So.
Tara, that's a good question.
Tara, where do I find a high demand list? Let's see. I know how to find it in Wiscat. Why don't I put the high demand list for Wiscat into that library profiles resources page? Because I know how to find it in Wiscat, but I have a hard time finding it in CILL. So if I go to my Wiscat, let me stick the link to that high demand list right in the chat here. There it is. Here is the inconstant demand list for Wiscat. And so you can bookmark it if you'd like, and they keep it updated at least once a month, usually twice a month. And And then you've got print books, DVDs, and books on CD all in here. And these are things that if you request it in Wiscat, odds are it's not going to come because everybody needs it. So Queen's Gambit, most likely you should just buy a copy if you don't have one. And like I said, I will throw that link into the resources on the SWHQ tab of the Library Profiles workbook so that you can access it anytime you need. All right. Do we have more questions? Comments? All right. Let's go through this chat here quick. Oh, tutorial videos. Yes, I also want to say that for those of you who want to train your staff, let's go out to YouTube. I did a beginners webinar for the ILS, and Shauna, do you remember if we put it here or? Yeah, I bet it's right here.
Yep, it should be there.
So, so the Southwest Wisconsin Library System YouTube channel has the VERSO basics that I had done in March, and it's an hour long, but it's got a slideshow and some documentation that might be really helpful to staff who are just hired or newer or not familiar with parts of the ILS. It also discusses what patrons see and what they can do versus what staff can see and do. And that can be really helpful to new staff too, so that they can kind of know what their patrons are expecting. So it's a helpful video. I know it's an hour long, but I really promise that it's useful.
I'm sure it is, and I always forget about those, so thank you for highlighting them again.
Let's go back. I also have on mine setting workstation printers, running a shelf list, which we kind of just talked about at the beginning today for collections and material types. I have moving items from newly acquired to permanent. This is a 10-minute overview on what to see in the CIRC reports, mostly in run reports, and how to write a report. How to add scoping levels. So if you want your patrons to be able to search just your adult fiction or just your adult books or just your DVDs, this gives you a little overview of how to add scoping levels. Here is a little video about how to add and edit your quick links. Here's how to set up age transitions and, again, moving items from newly acquired to permanent. So there's a bunch of stuff. I also want to give VERSO some credit. If you go to your staff dashboard to the support section, the VERSO user guides and videos have really gotten a lot better. So a lot of this is really kind of into the weeds, but if you get to the UX admin section, they have really nice videos on how to set up carousels on your splash page, how to set your search options, stuff like that. So these UX admin things to set your splash page up are excellent. And I have not done any of those because their videos are great. So it seemed silly for me to make my own. Sarah, I'm glad that they're helpful. That's great. I'm glad. And if there are things that you wish there was videos on, just let me know and I'll get it on my list of things to do, because sometimes just seeing it in action is helpful. So All right. Anyone else?
Thank you. I'm gonna head out.
All
Good to see
right, thank you so much. I am going to stick around for a little bit because it's 12:30 now, and originally we had planned on starting at 12:30. So we might have some people that weren't at our morning meeting that show up and have additional questions. So those of you who've been here, don't feel obligated to stick around. I am going to pause the recording and then only restart it if we have some extra questions. Does that make sense to everybody?